attending my friend's wedding only to find my ex-wife as the bride, the shocking reunion. Before we begin the story, make sure to subscribe to our channel and never miss more incredible stories every day. The doors opened, the quartet paused, and the bride stepped into light. My throat closed before my mind caught up. The veil, the walk, the tilt of her chin, Evelyn. My ex-wife, renamed by a single vowel on the program, Evelyn Moore. I was supposed to be an honor guest at my best friend's wedding. I stood, clapping on instinct while my pulse hammered like a bad alarm. I'm Daniel, 31, recently divorced, invited because Lucas swore we were still brothers. I came to prove I could be grown, to keep the peace, to keep what was left of my dignity. What I stand to lose now is all of it: self-respect, the last good memories, and the legal quiet we bought with signatures and split furniture. Evelyn's eyes slid across the aisle without catching on me. Lucas, at the altar, grinned like a man baptized in approval. The quartet resumed, and every step she took crushed old air out of my chest. I could hear Tessa whisper, "Breathe," from 2 rows back, the way you say stay to a startled dog. The program on my lap listed a story I didn't recognize. How they met last year, how fate moved quickly, how love heals what time cannot. My name didn't appear anywhere. Our old date didn't either. I shouldn't have come. But the RSVP went in on a hopeful day, before the rehearsal text, before Lucas joked he hoped I would take it well, before I noticed the invite spelled my middle initial like our defunct joint bills. I told myself this would be a controlled burn, some smoke, no flames. Stupid. Smoke finds everything it can stain. At the first pew, Evelyn lifted her bouquet. Her left hand flashed. The ring was not ours, but the setting, low basket, oval cut, felt like a counterfeit echo. Miss Calder, the venue manager doubling as day of coordinator, scanned the room with a face that said rules would be kept even if hearts cracked. I pressed my palms together to stop the shaking. The officiant opened his book. Lucas looked at me and lifted his chin as if to say, "See?" My mouth pulled one breath, then another, then none at all. We weren't a tragedy, not at first. Evelyn and I married at 26 because it felt efficient. We were 2 lists learning to dance, my spreadsheets, her beautiful chaos. She edited stories for a lifestyle site and practiced fresh starts like a hobby. I sold warranties, then managed accounts, then did the quiet work nobody celebrates. Our divorce papers were clinical: irreconcilable differences, asset list, no kids, a second-hand couch we divided with a coin flip. She kept the deck chairs. I kept the coffee maker that still sputters in my small kitchen. The end wasn't scandal. It was erosion. Her timeline slipped into curated myths. Ours became inconvenient on camera. When she met Lucas, my friend since middle school, they bonded over reinvention, while I learned what silence sounds like inside a text bubble. He was charismatic in the way people forgive. He asked me to stand up with him when he first talked engagement. In theory, not yet. One day. I said I'd try because men are taught to swipe feelings under doormats and call it maturity. 3 nights before the wedding, Lucas texted, "Hope you can take this well. We all deserve new chapters." I stared at the sentence like it was a tilted picture. I typed, deleted, typed again. New chapters shouldn't plagiarize the last book. He sent back a thumbs up. I laughed until it sounded like coughing. Tessa, younger but steelier, said, "If you go as a witness, not a martyr." She made me promise to take photos of anything that felt off. "Evidence calms the brain," she said, like a tech whisperer for grief. Now, in the ballroom, the past and present pressed their faces together like 2 kids on opposite sides of glass. The usher seated latecomers. Evelyn's bouquet rested against the lace I once knew by touch, the same pattern she'd pinned on our wedding board, pre-divorce, before the algorithm learned to serve me her new life. Lucas smiled wide enough to fit an alibi. I should have left then. I stayed because cowardice wears a suit and calls itself closure. The place card waited on linen like a dare. Danielle Timor. Only one person ever misspelled me like that. The bank rep who handled our joint account, and later, our untangling. I pocketed the card and felt the paper cut like a memory with teeth. 2 tables over, the planner's iPad flashed an email preview. Name change paperwork ready for pickup, urgent. I told myself it was a coincidence. Coincidences don't copy your handwriting. Cocktail hour moved like a choreographed lie. Lucas gave a little speech about reinvention and finding who we were always meant to be, lines lifted from Evelyn's old captions. She avoided my eyes like they were witnesses. I drifted to the photo booth corner looking for quiet and found templates identical to ours. Same font, same gold border, new monogram. Tessa appeared with 2 waters. "You're collecting?" she asked. I nodded. My hands were already full of small alarms. The photographer, bright and breathless, waved me over. "Can we grab a shot from the balcony?" she asked. "Bride wants that same angle from the sample album." My ribs cinched. Our wedding photos had lived online for a while, then vanished during the split. Apparently, they'd taught someone else how to stand in our light. I stepped onto the balcony anyway, because adults are very good at staging endurance. From above, I saw a mess. Calder consult a clipboard with the concentration of an air traffic controller. A planner's assistant whispered something. She shook her head and tapped the schedule. The efficiency felt like a fortress guarding a secret. My phone buzzed. "Tessa." I checked the county portal. "License filed 2 days ago. Bride listed as Evelyn, with no prior marriage disclosed." My tongue dried. We'd sworn truth under penalty of law once. She had signed then. Apparently she'd signed now, too, just with a vowel slid sideways. I swallowed hard and texted back. "Screenshots. Save PDFs. Pull times." The quartet switched to something triumphant. Lucas clinked a glass and called for silence. Lucas raised his glass and did what Lucas does, performed confidence. "Thank you to everyone who contributed to our charity registry," he said, eyes shining. "Your generosity helps us start free from burdens so we can give back." The room hummed with approval. My skin prickled. Charity registry was new language. We'd all seen the link, sleek and tasteful, promising experiences over stuff. I'd clicked it earlier in the week and noticed something small. The checkout page's fine print listed a payment processor I'd only seen attached to LLCs, not charities. Tonight, under chandeliers, that detail grew teeth. Evelyn smiled like Serenity had a brand deal. I caught a whisper from the planner's assistant. "Rush license courier arrived," she said into her headset. Rush. License. 2 days before. I moved toward the hall for air and nearly collided with the photographer reviewing a mood board on her tablet. A thumbnail looked painfully familiar. Our old balcony shot. Same framing notes, same caption. "Bride loved this inspo," she chirped. I heard my own voice inside my head say, "Stop trying to be brave. Start being awake." In the lobby, I texted Tessa. Payment processor line item shows LM Digital Holdings. Lucas's initials. She replied in seconds. "Send the URL. I'll trace it." I sent it and paste, counting the marble tiles like I could inventory sanity. Miss Calder passed with a clipboard. Her eyes were kind but unyielding. "Everything okay?" she asked, that hotel tone that could smother fires politely. "Just warm," I said, holding my smile at arm's length. Back in the ballroom, Lucas worked the room, thanking donors personally. I watched him hug an aunt who slipped him an envelope, watched Evelyn choose camera angles that erase shadows. The band shifted to something celebratory. The planner cued the next sequence like air traffic. I felt less like a guest than a prop stage for a narrative that denied I had ever existed. The cake knife glittered. A cousin nudged me. "Let love win, man." As if love were a game with referees and silent penalties. My phone buzzed again. "Tessa, LM Digital is Lucas's startup debt vehicle. Registry routes to it." I stared at the message until letters floated. The charity wasn't charity. It was solvent-looking cover for a siphon. What else was staged? How much of our old footage had been repurposed? I opened my cloud backups and found an archive I'd never fully deleted, our vows draft. The opening paragraph matched the line on today's program. I stepped outside to the riverside deck where the air had edges. The city moved in reflections, indifferent and clean. Inside, applause swelled. Outside, the river kept its counsel. A cousin followed, half drunk with goodwill. "You're the bigger man," he slurred, patting my shoulder. Bigger men leave when their lungs forget how to operate. Instead, I leaned on the railing and counted boats. Tessa found me, eyes sharp, breath fogging. "Document, not argue," she said, placing her phone in my hand. On screen, a chain of screenshots, registry checkout code showing LM Digital as merchant of record, a public filing linking that LLC to Lucas, and the processor's legal disclaimer stating donations were not tax deductible. Guests think they're giving to charity, she said. They're paying his debt. A laughter burst from inside. A DJ announced a game. I imagined envelopes, toasts, money sliding into a hole dressed as hope. If you blow it up now, Tessa said gently, you become the story. If you wait until proof is complete, the truth becomes the story. She was right, and still my hands shook with old vows and new thefts. I texted myself the screenshots, added timestamps, titled a folder, Wedding, Proof. My brain, grateful for a job, settled slightly. The door opened. An aunt stepped out with the stale advice families pass around like casserole lids. Let love win, she said. I nodded at the river and tasted metal. At the photo booth corner, I photographed the template names. In the hallway, I photographed the planner's schedule with license courier, Rush, scribbled at the margin. I snapped the program's How We Met paragraph and pasted it beside my old vows draft. The verbs matched too neatly for coincidence. Back at our table, my place card stared from my pocket like a dare. I slid it into the program sleeve and wrote 3 words on the cover. Facts before feelings. Then my phone lit up again. Tessa's face filled the screen, whispering fast. I checked the county portal deeper, she said. Prior marriage disclosure says never married. Her alias wipes your entire history. I sat frozen with Tessa's words in my ear. Never married. The county form read, though I had stood before a judge with Evelyn 3 years earlier, divorce decree in hand. It wasn't just omission, it was erasure. The system didn't hiccup. Someone filed a new license under a slightly altered name and answered the disclosure dishonestly. Fraud, plain as day, dressed in lace and champagne. I pulled up the portal on my phone to see it myself. The application date stamped just 48 hours before today, a rush approval flagged with an expedited courier. Bride, Evelyn Moore. Groom, Lucas Harper. Disclosure, first marriage. I rubbed my temples, while rising. Tessa hissed through the line. This isn't sloppy paperwork. This is deliberate. And if she lied there, what else is fiction? Inside, applause thundered for a toast. I forced myself back to my chair, clapping just late enough to look suspicious. Evelyn laughed at something Lucas whispered, the bouquet trembling in her hand. My phone buzzed again, screenshots from Tessa. She'd cross-referenced license numbers. Ours, years ago, ended in 72. Today's? 721. Just 1 digit off, as if time itself had been edited. I whispered into my glass of water, why risk this much? Pride? Image? Or maybe money, the quiet kind that trickles into LLCs when guests think they're giving to charity. Ms. Calder approached the head table with a clipboard. Evelyn leaned over to sign something, probably a vendor form, but for a moment, her hand hovered like she recognized me watching. Then she smiled and signed, graceful as a practiced liar. My jaw clenched. Proof wasn't enough. Proof needed daylight. That night, while guests swayed to music, I slipped into the hallway near the planner's office corner. A stack of invoices lay half-covered by a linen cloth. The top page glared. Rush fee, marriage license courier, $450. Bill to LM Digital Holdings LLC. Lucas's initials again, everywhere they shouldn't be. I snapped photos until my phone hummed with evidence. Downstairs, the registry station displayed a sleek tablet with looping slides. Contribute to our journey. Help us give back. I tapped a button when no one watched. Redirected to the same payment processor, merchant listed, LM Digital Holdings. Screenshots, time-stamped. I messaged Tessa. She replied instantly. Cross-check the photos. Find timestamps. We met by the photo booth, ducked behind velvet curtains like teenagers hiding. She pulled metadata from her camera app. The bridal portraits posted earlier that morning? EXIF data said they were shot 6 weeks ago, time-stamped in daylight at the same riverside deck. Evelyn had posed in her gown before Lucas had even proposed publicly. I felt heat creep into my face. So the whole story, the timeline, the vows, the registry, it's all staged? Tessa nodded grimly. They didn't just lie to you. They're laundering the entire narrative. From the ballroom, Lucas's voice boomed. Every gift goes to something bigger than us. Laughter and clapping followed. Evelyn raised her glass, eyes flicking toward me, daring me to break the illusion. The band struck up a new number. Guests cheered, wallets loosened, envelopes passed hand to hand. I watched money and faith funnel into an LLC like water down a storm drain. The proof folder in my phone grew heavy. Every file was a nail, and the coffin was nearly built. The vows draft opened like a ghost file. My own words, edited but unmistakable, stared back at me. Love is not erasure. It is memory carried forward. I wrote that line at our kitchen table years ago, Evelyn humming while I typed. Tonight, in her binder, the line reappeared, slightly altered. Love is not burden. It is future carried forward. Changed just enough to dodge plagiarism software, not enough to fool me. I wanted to laugh, wanted to vomit. She hadn't just recycled the dress pattern, the photo angles, or the fonts. She recycled my promises, once sacred, now props for a new performance. Tessa leaned over my shoulder. That's beyond lazy, she muttered. It's theft. I scrolled further. More lifted lines, my draft about honesty that doesn't hide, twisted into honesty that grows. Our old inside joke about coffee and storms, now pitched as theirs. She'd gutted our marriage for raw material. We sat in the corner of the ballroom, phones glowing in the dark like secret lanterns. Tessa whispered, registry funds, forged vows, falsified license. This isn't coincidence. It's a scheme. They're not marrying for love. They're laundering reputations and debts. The realization sat heavy. This wasn't about my heartbreak anymore. Guests were pouring money into what they thought was charity. In reality, they were subsidizing Lucas's liabilities, wrapped in a wedding story stitched from my leftovers. Across the room, Lucas grinned wide as envelopes stacked. Evelyn pressed her hand to his chest, every gesture camera ready. When she spoke, her voice carried, "We are so grateful. This is proof that love always wins." My fists tightened around the phone. Love doesn't win by counterfeiting. I excused myself to the hallway, pulse racing. My proof folder bulged with screenshots, registry routing to LM Digital, county license discrepancy, planner invoice with Rush Courier, EXIF metadata showing predated bridal portraits, and now the vows plagiarized from my own drafts. Each piece was sharp, but scattered. I needed to stitch them into one undeniable story. At a corner table, I laid out the timeline on paper napkins. Tessa hovered, typing fast. "We'll make a binder," she said. "Screenshots, receipts, metadata, county PDFs. No emotion, just dates and facts." I nodded, shaky but resolute. "And we'll record a call with the venue manager," I said. "If she confirms the courier timeline, that's the nail." We stepped into the service hallway where Ms. Calder stood with her clipboard. I cleared my throat. "Can you confirm when the license was filed?" She frowned, wary. "That's sensitive." Tessa held up her phone on speaker with a county clerk rep already patched in. The clerk read, "Application received Thursday, processed Friday, under alias Evelyn. No disclosure of prior marriage." My knees buckled slightly. Calder's eyes widened. She muttered, "That violates venue policy." I whispered to Tessa, "So what now? Confront them privately, or bring this public?" My chest ached with the weight of two possible futures. Let the farce play out to spare spectacle, or expose them and risk detonating every friendship in the room. Tessa gripped my arm. "Facts first. Feelings later. Guests deserve to know the truth before they give more." The band struck up the first notes of the cake-cutting song. Laughter bubbled. Guests lined up with envelopes. My phone buzzed. Lucas again, texting, "You good? Don't make tonight about you." I stared at the message until the letters blurred. Then I slid the napkin timeline into my jacket pocket and stood. Lucas leaned against the doorframe, blocking my way back into the ballroom. His smile carried all the warmth of a warning sign. "You and I need a word," he said, low enough that only I could hear. "Don't ruin this for her. Or for yourself." I stared at him. The man who once split fries with me after football games, who crashed on my couch when his car died, who swore brotherhood wasn't conditional. "You're asking me to lie by omission," I said, voice steadier than my pulse. He leaned closer, cologne sharp. "I'm asking you to be a man. Handle this like we agreed. Quiet. Respectful." His eyes flicked toward my pocket where the napkins hid my timeline. "I know you've been snooping. You don't want lawyers crawling over your life, do you?" Evelyn appeared at his side like an echo. She smiled at passing guests, then hissed between her teeth, "If you harass us again, Daniel, I'll file. Defamation, harassment, emotional damages. I'll erase you twice." The words landed like cold steel. I almost caved. Almost. Then Tessa's text buzzed. "Remember, facts first. Feelings later. Stay steady. I met Lucas's eyes. Truth doesn't need volume. It needs daylight. His smile cracked just enough to show strain. You're pathetic, he spat, then pulled Evelyn toward the cake table. Cameras flashed. Laughter filled the air. I pressed my binder of proof tighter against my chest. Doubt clawed, whispering I'd look bitter, jealous, small. But the faces in that room deserved more than theater. They deserved truth. Miss Calder hesitated, eyes darting between clipboard and crowd. If there's a conflict, it's best addressed formally, she said. We can use the conference room. Neutral ground. Within minutes, the pieces were in place. The officiant agreed to attend, bound by duty. Tessa texted the best man and maid of honor. Need witnesses for clarity. Trust me. They arrived pale and curious. The county clerk stayed on speakerphone, line buzzing. I placed my binder on the table, palms damp but steady. There are discrepancies, I said. License records, registry routing, vow plagiarism. Guests think they're funding charity. They're funding debt. Lucas sauntered in, Evelyn at his side, fury hidden under charm. This is absurd, he declared. A jealous ex spinning stories. He tugged Evelyn's hand like a prop. She kept her eyes fixed on the wall. I slid forward the first page. The license PDF with disclosure, never married. Then the invoice billed to LM Digital Holdings. Then the registry screenshots. Then the EXIF timestamps proving bridal photos weeks before the proposal. Finally, the vow draft lifted from my old cloud. The best man leaned forward, eyes wide. Lucas, is this true? Silence cracked across the room. Evelyn finally spoke, voice like glass. Details bore guests. They care about the story, not the paperwork. The county clerk's voice cut through. False disclosure is a legal violation. Registry misrepresentation may also be fraud. Lucas's jaw clenched. Clerical errors. Oversight. Nothing sinister. But the mask had slipped. Sweat dotted his forehead, his charm curdling. Ortiz's lesson from another life echoed in my mind. Proof is oxygen when lies choke the air. The officiant's voice cut like a bell through glass. This ceremony cannot proceed under false pretenses. The words landed with such weight that even the band in the ballroom faltered mid-chord. Through the door, guests craned their necks. Whispers slithered across tables. Lucas jumped up, fists pressed into the table. You're listening to a bitter ex. He's here to sabotage love because he lost it. His voice rose with the desperation of a salesman whose pitch was unraveling. Evelyn tried to soothe him, her manicured fingers clutching his arm, but her own mask cracked. The tremor in her jaw betrayed her. I opened my binder wider, sliding the receipts so everyone could see. The LLC filings, the invoice for the license courier, the EXIF data. These aren't opinions. They're facts, I said, my voice shaking but unbroken. The best man covered his mouth, shock flooding his eyes. The maid of honor whispered, Evelyn, tell me it's not true. Evelyn's gaze darted around the room, searching for an exit that didn't exist. We just wanted a chance, she murmured. People care about appearances. Stories need to be clean. The clerk's voice over speaker crackled, final and cold. A false declaration on a marriage license is a criminal offense. Records will be referred for review. The officiant closed his book, solemn. There will be no vows exchanged under my watch tonight. Silence turned heavy until it burst with the sound of someone in the hall gasping. Oh my God. Guests began murmuring, pulling phones, looking at each other with betrayed eyes. The illusion collapsed like a stage set kicked from behind. Lucas slammed the binder shut, shouting, You've ruined everything. But when he lifted his head, the cameras caught the sweat, the rage, the unraveling. And that was the moment the mask fully slipped. The conference room erupted in chaos. The best man stormed out, muttering curses about being played. The maid of honor covered her face, tears streaking her makeup. Phones lit up like wildfire as guests began messaging family and friends. The scandal sprinting out of the ballroom before the cake was even cut. Lucas tried damage control. This is blown out of proportion. The funds are safe. The love is real. His voice cracked on real. Evelyn sat stone still, mascara pooling, her earlier poise gone. She didn't even try to spin anymore. She looked at me like a mirror that wouldn't forgive. Miss Calder, the venue manager, stepped forward. Per venue policy, fraudulent documentation voids this contract. The event is suspended. She turned to staff. Secure all payments until further notice. Waiters froze mid-step, holding trays of champagne. Guests whispered about refunds, about scams, about trust. My phone buzzed nonstop with messages, some supportive, some venomous. "Daniel, how could you humiliate them?" One cousin spat. Another texted, "You saved us from donating to a scam." Truth divides before it heals. Lucas lunged toward me once, only to be pulled back by security. "You'll regret this," he roared. "You'll be nothing." His words bounced off me like dull arrows. I'd already been nothing in their script. Now I was something they couldn't erase, a witness. Later, as guests streamed out under confused stars, I walked to the riverside deck. The city lights shimmered on the water, indifferent. Tessa joined me quietly, sliding her arm through mine. "It's over," she said. I shook my head. "It's only beginning. They'll spin, they'll smear. I'll pay a price too." She squeezed tighter. "Maybe. But tonight, you kept people safe from fraud. That's worth the fallout." Behind us, the DJ packed his gear. The cake stood untouched, white frosting glowing under lonely spotlights. The days after the wedding felt like living inside a hive of whispers. Online headlines multiplied. Bride's past exposed. Charity registry scam? My name popped up in comments, some praising, others spitting. Friends split neatly down loyalty lines. Some said I'd acted cruel, bitter, jealous. Others messaged privately, "You saved us from giving money to a scam." Truth never comes without splinters. I met with a counselor to steady my footing. She said, "Boundaries are not revenge. They're survival." I repeated that sentence every morning like a creed. When Evelyn tried to call, I let it ring. When Lucas's cousin sent a long message about ruining love, I archived it. Closure wasn't theirs to grant. It was mine to build. I returned gifts mailed in my name. Some guests had sent envelopes, thinking they were contributing to something noble. I included a short note with each return. Funds were misrepresented. Protect your generosity by verifying destinations. It was my quiet act of repair. At work, I requested time off, and my manager nodded kindly. "You've been through war," she said. "Take your breath." I spent evenings on the riverside deck where the wedding had collapsed, walking the same boards but with lighter steps. The city skyline glittered indifferently, but this time, I felt gratitude for its neutrality. Tessa stayed close, tech guardian turned life guardian. "We'll write conditions," she said, drafting a contact rule. No unverified calls, no hidden accounts, no triangulation. She pushed me to publish a short factual statement online. Not bitter, not cruel, just evidence. Here are the receipts. Here is the truth. Decide for yourself. It steadied the tide of rumor. Healing wasn't glamorous. It was oatmeal in the morning, therapy on Tuesdays, walks at dusk, paperwork filed correctly. But each small choice stitched me back together. Weeks later, the wedding became a cautionary tale whispered at dinner parties. Lucas's startup faced inquiries. Evelyn vanished from social media, her curated timelines finally collapsing. For me, the dust settled into something quieter. I often replay the moment those doors opened, when I saw her veil and thought the world had tilted. Now I see it differently, not as my undoing, but as my proof. Proof that dignity survives erasure. Proof that lies, no matter how polished, crumble under documentation. I learned that closure doesn't come from an apology you'll never get. It comes from building your own record of truth. I learned that silence may look like grace, but sometimes it is complicity dressed in politeness. And I learned that boundaries are not cruelty. They are the handrails you need when the floor shifts. If you're listening, here's my advice. Keep your receipts. Screenshot the details. Save the files. Trust the small clues your gut notices. When love turns into theater, facts are the lights that expose the stage. I still walk the riverside deck sometimes, the same boards where everything fell apart. At dawn, the water reflects the city like a mirror of second chances. I breathe deeply, not because the hurt is gone, but because I know what to do with it now. Evelyn once said stories matter more than facts. But stories without facts are just costumes. Facts, even painful ones, are what keep us from being erased. And when I lock my door at night, binder safe on the shelf, I remind myself, I am more than what they tried to recycle. I am my own witness.